Hi, fellow Raven alumni and friends of Franklin Pierce. It's Grace McGinnis, class of 2012, and I'm here virtually today with Melissa Benitez and Amy Lamar, hosts of the True Crime podcast, Down the Rabbit Holes. Welcome,
Hi.
ladies, and thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So let's just dive right in and we can get started with some background on you. We can start with how did Pierce bring you together and what's the scoop on your podcast? What can listeners expect?
Sure. Those are two different questions. So Pierce brought us together because we met freshman year at Franklin Pierce. I ended up in a triple and wanted out. Amy's roommate moved home, right?
Yeah.
So they were like, here's a list of people you can go live with. And I knocked on her door and she was watching an SVU marathon. And I was like, I'm in.
Classic.
I don't know if you even asked. You were just like, hey, I'm here.
I mean, probably so. So go ahead, Amy. You can talk about the podcast.
Well, Melissa and I, as you can tell, we bonded over crime shows and true crime. And even after college and going back to our states that we lived in at the time, we continued to discuss whatever was going on in the media and books and documentaries. And we really started to get into podcasts when the podcast Serial came around. And if you don't know what that is, I really suggest you check out season 1. And we talked about it almost daily. And then I kind of forgot how things went after that. We just started making a lot of podcast recommendations. And then I said, hey, we should do a podcast. It'll be so easy. And Melissa was like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. And here we are.
Yeah, and that's how it happened. Just like Amy said, you know, like our favorite part about true crime is you get through the case and you get to the end and you're like, oh, okay, what happened? So we'd have those conversations ourselves, you know, like, could this have happened? And this, whatever happened here, and who did this and that? And we were always looking for those conversations and we couldn't find them after. So we were like, we'll just make them.
Yes.
I love it. So what would you say is your ultimate goal for the podcast? What are you looking to achieve?
When we started to brainstorm ideas, I mean, it was definitely going to be true crime. We kind of toyed around with the idea of missing children because we were like, well, if we're going to do something, we want it to have some sort of positive impact, no matter how big or small. You know, maybe it'll bring attention to some of these cases that otherwise would be like tossed to the side. And we started with the idea of missing children, but we always knew that we wanted to theorize, you know, what Henleys are like. They don't have relationships that would result in, you know, them disappearing with someone. They're either kidnapped or, you know, harmed by someone very close to them usually. So we kind of said we won't do that. And then we picked missing persons. Granted, we kind of do a lot of children, but that's just the way it felt.
So our format is one of us will tell you a case in the first 15, maybe 20 minutes, depending on how many twists and turns there are. And the fun part about it is the other person has not researched the case. So when Amy's walking me through a case or I'm walking her through one, we're hearing it for the first time. And we do that on purpose because the conversation that happens next is really organic. You know, once we lay out the timeline and the facts, then we say, okay, so like, where is this person? Child, person, whoever. And we talk about like each of the theories that are popular in the media, what the police theory is, what the family's theory is. And then we sort of talk through, well, if we take this fact and make it this fact, can this be true? And where do we end up? Sometimes we end up at the same place. Oftentimes we don't.
That's what keeps it interesting, probably.
Yeah.
So do you take turns picking a case and being the one to research it and all that?
Yep. So every other week, one of us will tell you the story. So, you know, if Amy tells it, she does all the research, she digs in, she'll do everything basically. And text me 5 minutes or so before the episode we set to record, and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and vice versa, just so we have like a heads up of what case it is. And we haven't even really done cases that each other really knew.
That's a cool element.
Yeah, it's fun.
So what goes into, how long are the episodes usually?
Our sweet spot is what, like 45 minutes?
Yes. I mean, we shoot for less than an hour.
I only think one episode went over an hour, and that's because there are so many twists and turns. We just kept talking.
Yeah.
What case was that?
The Springfield 3. It's an older case, and there is so many theories already out there and so many potential suspects, and it's 3 people that are missing, not just one. So there's a lot more to the case that we talked about.
Right.
So you're looking at 45 minutes usually for an episode, but how much time goes into all the background stuff, from researching to editing? Like, how much time really goes into one episode?
So, I mean, I'll speak for researching, probably 8 to 10 hours between watching documentaries, reading articles, writing my outline, and prepping everything. So the way we record, obviously, is we're in different places. I'm in North Carolina, Amy's in Connecticut. So we both have mics set up, our laptops, and then we FaceTime, because we have found that like the conversation flows more naturally when we're face-to-face having the conversation. The recording is probably an hour and 10 minutes or so, because there's a let me say that again, or wait, let me double check that. And we're having real-time conversation as we're recording.
Or there's lightning outside.
Or there's lightning, or our dogs bark, whatever it might be. And then we drop the audio into an online system, and then I'll let Amy take it from there because she does all the magic.
This is so far out of my wheelhouse. I never would have done it even for a hobby once upon a time. My significant other, actually, he owns a music store, and he, is very well versed in recording and instruments and all that stuff. So he was able to kind of give me a lesson, and it helped tremendously. And basically I take art and I pull it all apart, her soundtrack, my soundtrack, and I put it back together again. And I cut the things that are necessary, put them back together, add some music, and upload it. And it sounds really simple. And maybe for someone who does this for a living might think it's simple, but there is an art element to it, and it does take a significant amount of time to do. So, if we have a 1 hour recording, it probably takes me anywhere from 2 to maybe 4 hours to edit it and get it back to Melissa so that she can listen and make sure there's, for quality assurance.
Yep. So Amy can't listen to it again after she's listened to it for 4 hours back to back.
Yes.
So she'll drop it back to me. I'll listen to the whole episode start to finish, make sure there's nothing there that like either she missed or I hear that doesn't jive right. Then I'm just listening as a listener, and I'm just trying to hear how the conversation flows. Typically not a lot gets changed at that point, but then we load it to our host platform and release it.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot. Long story short.
Yes.
If we had known how much it would take before we started, I don't know that we would have jumped in the way we did.
So that kind of segues into my question about what your advice for people who are looking to get into podcasting or already are and need some tips? What are some tips or advice that you would give to somebody?
So if you're a well-meaning person, by all means, don't not do something because it's challenging or difficult.
Yep.
Definitely do it. I guess I would say when we wanted to record, I literally came home, had my iPhone earbuds and my phone, and I thought I was just going to do like a voice, or I don't know what I thought I was going to do. It wasn't okay. And my significant other looked at me and he said, "You are not doing that. It's going to be garbage." So we got, some more professional equipment, microphones and things like that. And we did it the right way.
Yep.
But as you know, as we told you, it takes a significant number of hours, and we prepped for about 3-4 months before we even released our first episode. Yep. So we were putting in a lot of planning and a lot of time. And I guess I would say, don't walk into something blindly, do your research. And we thought we were at the time, for sure. But we had a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that we did. It's such an accomplishment. And I'm an introvert, so I really wanted to push myself to be an extrovert in this situation. And I couldn't be happier that I did.
Yeah, I would say jump in, do it. Yes, it's a lot of work, but it's something to be really proud of. You don't have to spend a ton of money to do it. We didn't spend a ton of money when we started. If you're passionate, it's all about your content.
Yeah.
I like it. It's good advice.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's get into some of the juicy stuff. Would each of you share, if you can pick just one, your favorite case? Give us like a really quick background. I know that's probably not possible either. And why it's your favorite.
Sure. I always, for me, it was Brian Schaefer. I'll give you the 30-second overview. In 2006 in Ohio, he was a med student. He walked into a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloon and never walked back out. That's the entire case. And I'm not exaggerating.
Everybody's Googling it right now.
I mean, they should. Well, actually, you should just go listen to our episode, but that's cool too.
There you go.
But, I mean, there are 1.5 million theories with what happened. And I always come back to, how do you walk into a building and never come back out? So for me, that's probably my favorite that I've researched, because I lost days, like watching the video over and over again and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead.
I think that a case, I don't really know why it resonated with me. I think that I really empathize with the family, and that's Jacob Kavanaugh. He had a very mysterious disappearance, and he didn't get a lot of media attention, not anywhere near Brian Schaefer's media attention.
That's true.
He was a hardworking guy, very uneventful life. He went missing from Michigan. His cell phone pinged in a different place than his location, and his car has never been recovered, and that's the end of the story. Like, he just vanished.
How does a car disappear?
In the air. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
Wild. All right. Well, so those are your favorites. Is that reflected in your listeners, like in terms of downloads or listening minutes or whatever metric you use for that?
Brian Schaefer is in one of our top ones, but it also is a super covered case. If you Google Brian Schaefer, you'll get a ton out there. And Jacob Kavanaugh is not, but that speaks to the amount of coverage he got. You know, when you look at our top 5 cases or 10 cases that have we gotten downloads, and they are popular cases. They are ones that happen in the media that, you know, and they're why we do a mix of big cases and the undercovered ones, because the undercovered ones are just as important.
Right.
Yeah. So have you, in your time podcasting, have you ever had like a family member or the authorities reach out for any reason?
Authorities is like life goals, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But yes, we have gotten, I think it was 4 separate cases, emails from family members, either of the victim or of someone else that was in this story, that have, for us, it's super validating to hear, you know, family members especially, but in general, our feedback that we are respectful and conscious of the people involved. You know, one thing that gets wrapped up in true crime, it gets really sensationalized. And yes, there are going to be twists and turns and interesting facts, you know, but these are people, and they have families that are still having holidays without them. And we try to remember that in every single case. So when family members reach out to us and tell us like we did their case justice, or they appreciate our coverage, that to us is, to me at least, it's the most validating thing we can ever hear.
Mm-hmm.
I bet. All right, let's see. Questions about, all right. So the topic on everybody's mind, at least maybe a month ago, might be a little late by now, but did Carol Baskin kill her husband? What's your theory?
So this case, I'm going to say, and I think Amy echoes the same sentiment, it doesn't look good for Carol Baskin, okay?
Nope. Does not.
She may have made some terrible decisions in the process of her husband going missing. However, I would say in our episode, we make a compelling argument that he left his life.
Yes.
You hear that, Ravens? We got a new theory.
Yes, and our goal when that whole Tiger King thing broke, I called Amy and I said, we're going to scrap tomorrow's episode. We're going to record tomorrow and drop a whole new episode. And she was like, okay. And my whole approach was, I know that's what everyone thinks, but is it such a slam dunk? You know, I know everyone in the world says like Carol Baskin killed her husband, right? But is it that clean cut? And we both walked away saying, no, it wasn't.
Right.
Wow. Gotta listen to that episode, guys.
Yeah, you do.
All right. So I want to be conscious of time, but I do kind of going back to the process. What would you say is the best part about working with a friend? Don't all start at once.
It's hard in our fair podcast. Like, Melissa just sent me in the mail. I mean, it's not, murder or anything like that, but she sent me a book last week on Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein. And she's like, you have to read this. And this is just what we do all the time. It's just, it's fun to do it more than we probably did before. We've always connected really well around it. And how can you go wrong theorizing and trying to figure?
And I would say we balance each other really well. Where Amy is super strong.
Oh, yeah.
I am not, and where I am strong, she is not. You know, I think that we really are a good balance. We don't really disagree. I feel like when we were starting this whole thing, one of us would say something, we'd be like, yeah, let's do it. Great. And there was no like No, we shouldn't do that. We just like on the same page from the beginning, and all of our stress, I would say, comes from like a deadline, an episode not being ready, and us recording late or whatever it might be. But that's an us thing, you know. It's not one of us.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, good. Sounds like a positive experience.
Yeah, and I will say, and I'll give this advice too to anyone that wants to start, is have the conversation, the tough conversations in the beginning. We sat down and talked about what one of us wants to stop, or what happens if one of us can't record, or what does that look like? Because when you're not making money, it's really easy to argue over nothing.
Right.
You'll have those conversations because you don't want to get in a situation where you do have a following and you do have a Patreon page and you do have all these things, and then you're talking about the hard things.
Yes.
That's a good point, and something that people probably don't think about, don't want to think about when they're getting started, but a really good point. You know,
yeah, buy your logo, like spend the $50 to have your logo trademarked and it's yours. Things like that. You know, they're not expensive, but make sure you're protecting yourself in the beginning because it's a lot harder to go backwards.
Yes, and I wouldn't have thought of that because I'm type B, Melissa's type A, and I'm the type of person that's like, Melissa could say, hey, you want to fly here tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I'll figure it out as I go. So if it weren't for her, I wouldn't know either.
Yeah. Just Google a lot is what I would say. You know, read, make sure you're just protecting yourself. You know, like we got really lucky. We got a great, our music composer is it's our music because someone wrote it for us. Our logo, someone designed it for us. Like we got really lucky with some great people in our lives. Yeah. But all of them, you know, we signed contracts and made sure that we're protected in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. That's really good advice. All right, so to bring it all back to our alumni who are tuning in, going back to your Franklin Pierce days, can you think of maybe a favorite memory or just something fun for our alumni to reminisce about?
Well, for me, I feel like I'm dating myself because this is such a common thing now. But for me, this is where I was exposed to ranch dressing. And all I remember is going in and eating fries for every meal with ranch dressing. And I remember like down by the lake, the apartments or the condos were built or whatever. And that was the place that you wanted to go. And that's where you wanted to be.
Totally.
I agree. I mean, we had some great times. Most of the times we just kind of gloss over, you know?
I know.
We had fun.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, before we sign off, how can people find and listen to your podcast?
Sure. It's called Down the Rabbit Holes. It's on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, Down the Rabbit Holes Podcast. Mm-hmm. And you can email us at theories@downtherabbitholespodcast.com. And our website is downtherabbitholespodcast.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure our alumni are going to be digging into some of those cases in your episodes. So, yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.